All right, so we created boxes using the div tag before, but now it's time to create an actual website layout with boxes that contain things using semantic elements. Semantic elements is just a fancy way of saying boxes with meaning. We know what kind of content is going to go inside of these boxes. So for instance, if I make a box with a div tag, I don't know what's going in that box. It's just a division on the page because that's what div stands for, is division. That box has no meaning. The user doesn't know what goes in it. I don't know what goes in it. It's just a box. But when we start talking about using semantic elements or boxes with meaning, that means that we know what goes inside of it. And that helps us to organize our website, but also helps us for accessibility for other people, especially those who are hard of seeing. Because you have to think about those who see a website and can't actually see it, but use assistive technology to have it read to them. When they reach a div tag, the computer doesn't know what to tell them is inside the box. But if they reach a nav tag or a navigation, they know that that is the navigation for the page with the links to the other pages that it corresponds with. So when we use semantic elements that have names, they have boxes with meaning, and it's helping us organize ourselves. It's helping us know what's going to go inside of those boxes. And then it's also helping with those who may be harder seeing. And it's really important that as you make a website, or any graphic or anything like that, you're keeping in mind every user of that website. And that includes those who are hard of seeing as well. So let's talk about semantic elements. We've used a lot of terms for boxes. Now I've just thrown in another one at you: semantic elements, block elements, divisions, sections. Essentially, all of these things create sections on your website. It's just a question of, is it just a box or is it a box with meaning? Right? Is it a section or is it a section with meaning? And in this case, we're talking about sections that have meaning. We know what's going to go inside of them. So I want to take a look at a website real quick. So this is a really basic website. I just want you to take a moment at it to look at it. And I want you to think of, okay, so if I were to create this website and I were to know where I want the header to be, where I want the navigation to be, where I want the main content to be, and where I want the footer to be, what would those be on this webpage? So take a look real quick and find where you would have, like, where did they put the header, the navigation, the main content, and the footer. This is important to think about because you need to think about how you want it structured. Do you want your header to be up at the top of the page where it usually is because it's a header, right? Where do you think a footer would be? At the bottom of the page, just like you have in your documents when you talk about headers and footers. Those are pretty simple ones. But then let's talk about your navigation. Sometimes the navigation goes across the top of the page underneath the header or even above the header. Sometimes it's off to the side, right? So your navigation is all those links to all those pages that we go to. If you think about visiting any form of a website, a lot of the time they may have multiple navigations, one up at the top and one on the side if they have a lot of things going on. So you could have multiple navigations that way as well. In addition, where's the main content, right? Like, where's the most important stuff that we want the user to be looking at? And that's generally in the middle of the page. And this is also important to think about because when we go to look at this on a smaller device like a phone, your phone is going to reorganize things. If you've ever looked at a website on a computer versus on a phone, sometimes the navigation moves around and it condenses and it gets smaller and it locates in a different spot. I see navigations who are sometimes up and down switch to be along the top when it's on a phone. And that's important to think about because the computer, your browsers, Safari, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, on whatever you're using, that browser is trying to figure out how is it best for me to display this information so that you can see it easily. So let's take a closer look at this. This is the zoomed in version of this website. Where would the header be? Probably up at the top, right? We've got a header that says modern art, conceptual art, and cubism. And I can tell you that the header is a box. So it's probably that whole light gray area ranging from here to here and all the way down. That's probably the header. Then let's talk about your navigation or your nav. Where are the links to the other important web pages of this website? Because a website is made up of multiple pages linked together. So when we talk about our nav, this little guy all the way over to cubism would be the nav bar. The nav. It's where we then put in all the links that we want the user to go to. Now, there's other links over here. That's a secondary bar or a secondary A side or whatever area you want to call it. But the main navigation is what I'm talking about when we talk about nav. And we want them to be able to go to the homepage. We want to be able to see conceptual art and cubism. And those are the three main pages we want. Then where's the content, right? Where's the main information? And that's everything in the middle, including this sidebar over here. That's included. And then all the way at the bottom of the page, we've got this other gray bar right here. That's the footer. So now let's take a look real quick at how we would break that down into boxes. Remember, I told you that almost every web page is broken into these invisible boxes that you can't see, or sometimes they have a background color that you can see. For instance, this header has this light gray background. That's the background of that box. And that box is not called a div. It's called a header. So the header opens here, it has the content inside of it, and then it's actually closing down here. The nav bar or the nav, we'll get to a nav bar in a little bit, but we're going to start with a nav, is right here all the way over. And that contains the little face of the guy, the icon, these three links, and this background color. And then we've got the main section, and this main section goes all the way to the bottom. And if we zoom in even further, we can see it showing that it's really breaking it down into boxes. The footer goes all the way down at the bottom with that background color as well. Now let's look at the main for a second, because there's two sections to this, if you really look at it. There's the content on the left, which is kind of the information about this, and then there's a secondary portion about supporting them and reading additional information. You can break it down even further. I know, boxes within boxes, holy crap. Yeah, websites are made of boxes within boxes. And I want you to think about how you would really truly organize a website so that it holds together. And you have to start thinking about websites in boxes because that's what they are. So we've broken this down not just to main, but into article, which is the most important information on a web page. Article always indicates the most important information, and then A side. And so we've contained those inside of a box called main. And I think this is important to note because when we're talking about a website, it's broken into these semantic elements: header, footer, nav, main, article, A side, but they're all just boxes with names, and they say what's going to go in them. The header is going to have probably the logo of the website or something that's important to signify what the website's about. The nav is going to have the navigation or the links to all the pages. The main is going to have all the content, and the footer is going to have the additional information that would be at the bottom, kind of like your copyright and your about us information. Then your article is going to have the most important information of your website. So the content you really, really, really want the user to see. The A side can just be an additional side piece to the left or right of your article. Article side, A side, right? You have other concepts as well that you can use, other semantic elements that we'll get into. But for now, you need to start looking at websites as boxes and boxes within boxes.